Great. Let's have some questions. It was excellent. Again, thank you. Stephanie, you're up first. Stephanie Henry's a social worker at Lombard North. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, that was a lot of information, and I have a gazillion questions, but if I were to shave it down to one, I was particularly interested in the stress response. You gave an example of an unpredictable, um, extreme, like prolonged environment, creating that sensitized, stress response, and how
Yeah.
the predictable, moderate, controlled environment creates, like resilience. So my question is, particularly for the high school setting,
Yeah.
is being in the school setting for 7.5 hours enough to kind of rewire that overly active stress response for a student? Or is there more that needs to happen in order to get them to that place where they're kind of shifting from being overly activated with stress to resilient?
Yeah, that's
Mm.
a great question. And
Mhm.
the good news is that the brain, these systems in us are seeking normality. They seek to heal. Like during normal development, they're sort of like we're out looking for the right things to stimulate us to grow in the right way. And fortunately, it doesn't take that much to kind of get us off in the right direction. So 7 hours of quality relational opportunities at school can absolutely both counterbalance, but then begin to create healing environments for kids to go from being sensitized to being sort of typical to being actually resilient. And this is actually what happens with many. You talk to people who are either professional artists, professional athletes. They will tell you the stories of they came from really hard. Some of them came from a hard place, and they'll talk about how they were saved by a coach, how they were saved by doing
Mm.
drama, how it saved them to do music. And the one quality that all of these things have, both performing arts, creative arts, sport, is that there are these relational environments where there's opportunities for controllable regulatory activities that involve rhythm and bring meaning to what somebody does. And this can happen, I can't tell you how many people are saved by educators. School really saves so many people. And I think that educators should appreciate that. It's hard, you never know, what it's doing, but Stephanie, absolutely, that's enough time.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi, Dr. Perry. Thanks so much for your presentation. I wanted to ask you a question that specifically kind of about the power of relationships and the impact of that. And
Yeah.
we see students come into the classroom having experienced a variety of adverse circumstances,
Mm.
which we know can impact the availability of the cortex due to some of the stress responses that you shared. And educators sometimes feel like they have a limited ability to kind of overcome that predicament
Yeah.
in order to help the student be successful in the classroom. Can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about how the power of relationships can help a student's cortex be more available and optimize learning for them, even in spite of adversity that they have experienced previously?
Yeah. Again, that's a great question, Michael, because it really is at the heart of the power and the magic of what an educator can do. And the thing I want people to hear, and this is true for parents, this is true for everybody, the human brain will react and change in response to experiences that are just seconds long if
Mm.
they have the right quality. So, a child who really feels that the teacher is present and engaged and really sincerely is asking how they're doing, that doesn't have to be a 40-minute interaction. That can be a 30-second interaction in the hallway. It
Yeah.
That's the power of relational stuff and this is the power of an educator or any adult who's in a child's life who can kind of be present in the moment and let all the other deadlines and all the other stuff and all other stuff you're worried about just be gone for the 8-10 seconds that you're right there with that child. Because in that time, that is a completely different feeling and experience for the child than somebody who's just kind of mailing it in, right? And because we all kind of, we've all done it, right? Like, how you doing? Great. Okay, whatever. And but if you actually have a moment where you're really truly there and they feel it, they use that again and again and again and again. That's the great power of the cortex, is it creates a memory of the moment. So a small dose of powerful relational engagement is incredibly powerful. And of course, if you're lucky enough to get 4 or 5 teachers who give you a couple of those moments in one day, if you get lit, and really what that could be, you could get 1 minute of quality interaction divided, 3 teachers, 20 seconds each. That would help you through a whole day of crap. And that's what's powerful. Now, the key to this, in my opinion, is that we take care of the educators so that they can give more of those moments. Because if they're tired and they're exhausted and they're disrespected and they're kind of running all over, they can't be present. They can't give these little moments. And that's kind of, it's interesting that those of you who think back on this, a lot of these moments kind of happen by serendipity. You kind of run into a kid in the hallway. Hey, wait,
Yeah.
where are you going? What's going on?
Yeah.
30 seconds. It's not scheduled. It's not planned. It's not in your book. It's those moments. All right, next time, get a pass, go. But those things make a big difference, right?
Yeah.
You.
Beautiful. Thank you. Brittany, you're up. Brittany is the social worker at Glover South.
Thank you for your work and your time, Dr. Perry. It was great to listen to you, and I'm intrigued and want to listen to more. So Mike actually stole my question, so we were on the same wavelength. But I do have another one, and I'm guessing, I would assume that the answer is lengthy. I'm going back to the beginning of your discussion when you talked about how humans are only aware of a very small percentage of the stimulus and sensory stimuli in our environment. And that's so
Yeah.
interesting to me because, and I know that everybody processes sensory stimuli differently. But I am curious if sensory stimuli that we're not even aware of can still impact us negatively. And
Absolutely.
I'm thinking mostly about our students who, we'll talk about how their behaviors or the way that they express their feelings about normal circumstances, if they're responding certain ways to what we perceive or what I might perceive as a normal circumstance, if really to them it's an abnormal circumstance.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my wheels are spinning about it, but I'm curious the impact of the stimuli that we're not even aware of.
Yeah. I mean, you just hit on one of the most important aspects of really kind of the psychotherapeutic phenomenon related to trauma or early life relational problems. And it's true about all sensory input, but it's particularly true about relational or previous history of traumatic experiences. And I'll give you a simple example, right? We're so sensitive to sensory input that I've had Vietnam vets who were asleep at night who would wake up in a complete panic when a helicopter flew over their house at a sub-auditory height. In other words, you can't hear it, but you can feel the vibrations. And so that's how sensitive our brain is to sensory input that we might not consciously have access to. So when we grow up, for example, and this is one that manifests a lot in school, if you grow up and for whatever reason you have a male caregiver who's hostile, who scares you, who hurts your mom, it might be one of mom's boyfriends or whatever, your brain as a little infant will literally make associations between loud voices, loud male voices, and threat. And you may end up as an 8th grade kid and your gym coach might just yell, "Come on, let's go." And that would be a trigger for you to have a complete meltdown and use whatever stress response adaptations you use that when you're an infant. And as an infant, the fight or flight response doesn't work very well, particularly if you're in an environment where the adults are not paying that much attention. You dissociate, you shut down. So this 8th grader, instead of having blowing up, just is being told to get going by the coach. He literally shuts down, stops, becomes non-responsive, and pisses off the coach even more, who yells more, and the kid gets more shut down. And all of a sudden you have a kid who gets dragged out of gym class and goes to see the teacher or goes to see the principal. But
Yeah.
that happens all the time.
Mm, mm, mm,
You know, those of you who are interested in implicit bias, that's an example of you have a whole set of associations that we create when we're growing up, and those are always at play. And they manifest in a lot of different ways, sometimes unhealthy ways. But every one of us is walking around with an internal catalog of things that are safe and familiar, and an internal catalog of things that are threatening, and then an internal catalog of things that are unknown and potentially threatening. And so in any given interaction, one of those might happen. And we think that our behavior is because we wanted to do A, B, and C, but the truth is most human behavior is elicited. And we educators see this all the time, right? The teacher will come in and explain something, the kid will come in and explain it, and you as a social worker go, it's like you guys are on 2 different planets. I mean, but they were both working from their worldview.
Right. Very good.
Thank you, Dr. Perry.
Thank you. Jordan, we're getting close to the end here. Jordan, go. I've got a question here that came in from a parent. What role can parents play in helping children regulate at school? How can we equip them to manage stressors so their brains are available to learn?
Great question. You know, one of the things that we found that's really, really helpful is for parents, and sometimes with the help of the educational system, is to teach kids about the stress response. Just so just to normalize the fact that, hey, it's normal when you're being challenged. It's normal before shooting free throws to kind of get dysregulated. So here's what you do. Let's do a little ritual. Let's have a little ritual before the test. Let's learn these little techniques to kind of deep breathing. You can kind of calm down and get centered, and it's okay. So when we help children understand uh, just the normal parameters of stress and distress, and then develop a couple of self-regulatory tools, it really is a really good start to helping them create moderate responses when there are these predictable stressors like tests or competitive events or recitals and so forth. And the more you get through a recital and you recognize that you did okay, that actually helps build a little bit of confidence. That's part of creating resilience, is that these opportunities to actually get challenged and succeed, get challenged and succeed. And that the bigger the challenge, you can tolerate a bigger challenge if you learn some of these regulatory techniques to kind of bring down a little bit of make it a little bit more moderate, and which increases the probability that you'll do well, which increases the probability that you can do it again. And so again, very simple psychoeducation, teach people about the stress response, teach people a few simple, take a deep breath, count to 3, don't rush through your questions if you're taking a test. Again, educators have a lot of these techniques that they can teach kids about either tests or preparing for a performance. Coaches teach athletes before you get up to the bat, you develop your own little ritual about how you place your feet, focus on this. And again, good coaches learn all of this, the sequence of like help the child develop a cognitive and then a motor sequence and create a ritual that creates familiarity around something that is challenging and unfamiliar.
Here's our last question, and you've been extremely generous with your time. I appreciate it. So I know you're a parent, and so talking to the parents as we say goodbye, in your elevator speech, it's a Sears Tower, and you don't have a lot of time, but
Yeah.
what do you want them to know about building that critically important relationship to help them with the challenges today?
I think it's really the most important thing is to let yourself just be present and just go in the moment. It's better to have fully present moments than to have a lot of presence where you're not engaged. And part of that is, again, kind of like we were talking about with the educators, that if you can just, for the moment, set aside all the, I got to cook and I got to get in the laundry and I got to do this, just let it go, get on the floor for 2 minutes, be present.
Mhm.
You'll feel better, they'll feel better. And don't underestimate the power of the moment. It's better to have lots of little brief moments than to beat yourself up because you couldn't do 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there and 30 minutes there. Just these moments are powerful. And you've got, if you take care of yourself, it'll
Mm,
be easier for you to be fully present in the moments for your children.
I think we're in the top floor. You did great.
Thank you very much.
A pleasure, always a pleasure. What a
Yes,
gift to our community. Thank you so much, Dr. Perry. All the
my
best in the new
pleasure.
year. Thank you.
Thank you. And to you.
See you. Take time.
Bye-bye.
Next time. Bye-bye.